Hey, welcome to Next Level Method Podcast. I'm Richard Ryerson.
And I'm Matt Lilly.
And we're here to help you take your life to the next level. Let's get started. Wow, your good friend Dr. Devin was on the show, Devin Vrana.
Yes.
She's a chiropractor here in town called the LightHouse. And she's a chiropractor with her husband. What an amazing spirit.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And I knew that you guys had a history with her and her husband. And I've met her just last week was the first time I met her. And man, she's just so much fun to talk to.
Yeah, definitely.
Got into chiropractic based on a nudging and a calling.
Yes.
You know, kind of, she'll go through that in the episode. But I really appreciated talking to her because she's kind of like us, what we're trying to do at Next Level Method that you talked about is like, we feel like, we can change the world. And when we say the world, at least you're part of it, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It starts there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, just your thoughts on the conversation. I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think, I wanted to have her on the show because she's very passionate about life. She's very passionate about living. And I think that's just a good reminder for myself and everyone listening that, it's life is messy, life is hard, life is challenging, but that all, as she says in the podcast, but if you convert that and think it's exciting, it truly is exciting to be alive. Sometimes it doesn't feel exciting. Sometimes it feels like the tiger's chasing you and you're running and it's like, yeah, this is super exciting, but I'm scared to death. But no, Devin just always puts a great spin on, what's going on in her life. And when I say spin, really perspective, she puts a great perspective on life in general. And she has, she's come through chiropractic and has an event she puts on and groups she hosts. So she's shining her light, as she said in the show, she's shining her light. And I think that certainly helps myself and others kind of lean in more. Yeah. And I was like, okay, great. Here's somebody who's inspirational. They're doing it. They've got kids. They've got a job. They've got responsibilities. I've got those same things. I can lean in.
Yeah.
Right.
And she's a great example of leaning in, of living in the moment, of realizing that life is short.
Right.
That it, as we talked about pain, she more, I think, aptly put it as pressure, right? Those pressure points in life. Right. That's what creates the diamonds. It may be kind of crappy going through it at the moment, but there's something significant on the other side. And so that was my big lesson talking with her. It was a really fun conversation, and people can get a lot of value out of this. Anything to add about Dr.?
I think, you won't have to drink a cup of coffee if you want to get off coffee. You want to get off caffeine.
She's very energetic.
You just listen to this podcast. You can and just listen to her talk. So you will definitely be inspired.
Go check out nextlevelmethod.com to learn more. You can look at all the show notes of Dr. Devin. She's got a lot of great stuff to connect with her, but also you can find out more about our upcoming live events and all the things that we offer at Next Level Method. And download our app at your favorite app store and get our Next Level Method app, and you can get connected with our community and learn more how to connect with us and possibly become a coach. So connect with your favorite podcast application. Follow us on that. It does wonders to get us front and center in a sea of 3 million podcasts. So help us by subscribing, rating, and reviewing. So let's get on with this great conversation with Dr. Devin Vrana here on Next Level Method. Well, Devin, so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Dr. Devin's on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I love these. You never know what's going to come up.
Yeah,
so
that's why we like doing them. We were just saying
exciting.
that. We were saying that yesterday. Sometimes we go in and like, what are we going to talk to this person about? Not you. This was another person. But and then they always end up these little kind of gems,
nuggets. These little gold nuggets. It's like mining, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, tell us more about that and how'd that work. So yeah.
I love podcasting. Yeah. I'm curious about. I'll let my curiosity take over. I'm curious about your origin story. I'm curious about how you got into owning your own business, how you became a chiropractor. Are you a Wichita native? Were you born and raised here?
So born in Fort Dodge, Iowa, a little podunk, heart of America place, and ended up in Wichita about 4 years old. So yes, went to Andale High School from here, growing babies here now. So
yeah, I live in Andale. That's where my kids went to school. Andale. I just moved there about 13 years ago.
I love it.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yep.
And actually, Dr. Devin and I met when our son was a baby because he was having some sleep issues, I think, something like that, and which meant I was having some sleep issues.
Right.
And so we found Dr. Devin, and she kind of specializes in helping little people feel better. Is one of the many specialties she has. And so that's when we met. And it was kind of, and then over the years, we've become friends, and her husband and I are good friends. We've traveled and done some vacation stuff together. So we're tight.
That's it. Homies.
We're tight.
Yeah.
So I really am excited to have her on today because I know how passionate she is about things and want to talk about some of those passionate things. But yeah, let's get back to kind of what brought you to kind of chiropractic, or why did you choose that field?
You guys just kind of like set it up perfectly without even knowing it. So I was pre-med or pre-dentistry. I didn't know which one. I just knew, like, I guess I wanted to help people, and I heard they made a lot of money and they lived pretty cool lifestyles. So going through college, it was like, yeah, that all makes sense. And then I started shadowing and couldn't find anybody that I was resonating with. And turns out I really don't like blood. Pass out inside of my own blood. And I don't like taking drugs. I don't even like taking supplements or vitamins so I was like, well, med's kind of out. So I shadowed a dentist and I was like, man, I just don't think I can do that. So taking MCAT, taking the prep test for dentistry, and I am up against graduation with a baby of my own. So single mom at K-State, putting myself through. And I honestly was bartending and feeling very, very lost, and waited on this party. I'll just never forget it. At the bar that I worked at, I waited on this big party, and there was one guy that seemed to kind of like be the life of the party. And he came up and he paid for everybody's tab. And broke, living in a bottom basement, trying to just finish college with my child, I was like, I want to be able to do that. Like, he just lit everybody up. And I was like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a chiropractor. Don't know his name, don't know where he practiced, but I had enough time with him to say, where did you go to school? He tells me Cleveland. I go home that night, and I literally had been like on my knees in tears going like, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to make a life for you. It's you and me, kid. Like, what are we going to do? And I come home and it's 3 a.m, after the working that night shift. And I look up Cleveland Chiropractic, and they're having a discovery day the next week, right? So here's my first interaction with the universe going, hey, come this way.
Right.
So I go to Cleveland Chiropractic, and they start talking about the power within the body, that the body knows how to heal itself, that we are self-healing organisms. And I like start crying in the back room all by myself. And I call my mom. I was like, Mom, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And she was like, Devin, you've never been to a chiropractor. No, but this is it. This is like, they're saying things I've always known, but I've never heard.
Right.
And she's like, well, how much does it cost? I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, how long's the program? I was like, I don't know. I was like, but this is it. This is it. Like, all of it felt like hand of God, right?
Yeah.
So I get into school, and, really just putting it all together, because I actually didn't get my first chiropractic adjustment until I was like a month or 6 weeks into school. So I had signed up, hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of my life for this thing. And, but I think that's the beauty in my experience with it, because I didn't have any preconceived notions of what it was or what it wasn't.
Right.
And so I've gotten to fall in love with it from the inside out. And, I had migraines my whole life. And as I started getting adjusted, they went away. So I have my own personal testament. But bigger than that was my baby. So if you rewind, being a single mom was hard enough, but his birth was awful. He was forceps. He was blue. He didn't cry right away. And the whole experience was awful. And then about 2 weeks after I brought him home, I was changing his diaper. And when I went to lift his legs, he gasped for air and passed out.
Oh, gosh.
And so I'm like already feeling like the worst person ever. I don't know how to raise a baby. I'm a young 21-year-old girl. And here this baby passes out, have to call ambulance. By the time they get there, they're like, he's fine. And I was like, no, you didn't see what I saw. And he would do this thing where he would cry. And if he would arch, or if I held his head wrong, he would pass out.
Wow.
So we ran all these different tests. I was using my pediatrician, who I had seen growing up. And he's like, oh, honey, you just got a fussy one. And I was like, that's not it.
Right.
Like, something's wrong. Fast forward a year and a half into chiropractic school, right at a year. And somebody was like, have you had Roman adjusted? And I was like, what? Why would a kid get adjusted? And they're like, well, what was his birth like? And I was like, they're like, well, does he sleep well? I was like, he's never slept through the night, ever. I was up with him almost every night for 2 years.
Wow.
And he gets adjusted, and he had a cycle of ear infections. He wasn't a sick kid. He just was never well. He wasn't right. And I'm like, oh, what am I doing wrong? He got adjusted, and all of a sudden everything changed. And I was like, what is this? And so I start studying it, and he had trauma to his vagus nerve. And so that was what was causing all of the issues. So then I got a little angry. Matt mentioned passion. I get a little fired up from time to time.
You get a little feisty. Sometimes I like to push your buttons just to see how feisty you'll get.
I don't know if I should say it like this, but I don't know any other way to say it. I was pissed.
Right. Yep.
I was like, first of all, why didn't the doctors know? Second of all, why was I a year into chiropractic school and the chiropractors didn't tell me? And it was just like, why don't people know? Why don't moms know this? How many moms out there feel like a failure when they can't get their kid to go to sleep, or when they cry all the time? We're supposed to innately know as women how to care for our child. So when we can't meet their needs, it's a visceral pain. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I'm going to do everything I can, number one, to help these children, that are crying out for pain and no one's listening. And I want to help these mothers not feel what I felt. And it just sent me on a, mission from God, I guess.
Right.
So out of pain comes purpose. And
yeah.
that was how I got started.
I appreciate the fact that you, I love those little kind of kismet stories or universe aligning stories where you just kind of no forethought, or you just said, this is what I'm doing. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when your mom hung up the phone and what she said.
What she said behind the scenes, like, well, she's at it again. Here she goes again.
Yeah, no,
Devin's doing it again.
I mean, my dad, they tried to talk me out of it. It was the same thing. Yeah, same thing when I said I wanted to go train for acupuncture. My dad, grew up very Catholic, very conservative, and they're like, that's witchcraft. And I was like, no, it's not. It's been around for centuries. Like, what are you talking about? And had our own personal stories with that. But the best decisions I've ever made in my life have never come from here.
Yeah.
It has always been this thing that's like,
100%.
Turn left.
100%.
Like, go there. And when I'm in flow with that, I'm on the money every time.
Right. And I want to capture a phrase that you said, because I like it. It's kind of like a little a catchphrase, a Devin catchphrase. Out of the pain comes purpose. And I heard you say that, but we were going pretty fast there. So I wanted to make sure that we, as we're getting into our conversations, and a lot about what we talk about here on the show, is that it isn't an easy ride to find purpose. It isn't necessarily, it's not a straight line. It's not an easy road. Purpose comes with learning and peeling away layers to your vocabulary. Pain, right? It's uncomfortable.
It's the price of admission.
Right. And we talked about resilience in a show not too long ago. So yeah, definitely it was, like you said, none of that sounds very like we're in Kansas. None of it sounds very, well, I guess it does sound like the yellow brick road, because Dorothy encountered a lot of trials and tribulations down that yellow brick road, didn't she? So it is kind of yellow brick road. Okay, so you're in chiropractic school. You graduate.
Yes.
Kind of what's next for Devin then?
Along the way, there was this blonde-haired guy. He had hair, long curls down here, and he just kept following me around. I couldn't shake him, but met the love of my life in chiropractic school.
Well, he just sounds precious.
Yeah, no, he is honestly my best buddy, and that's my favorite part, is that we get to share chiropractic. We ended up having a lot of mutual friends when we got to know each other, and it was like, how have we never met? And if we would have met any sooner, it probably wouldn't have worked. And so we got married in June of 2010, and we graduated in August of 2010, and we came back where we were from in Goddard, Kansas, and bought a building to build a dream practice in September. And then I found out we were pregnant with twins. In like the span of 4 months, we got married, we graduated, we bought a building and started gutting it. And then I found out I was pregnant with our first set of twins, because I have one son and then 2 sets of twins after that. And so life was fast and it was furious. But again, here comes that pressure, right? Like and it was, it was bigger than us. We both like wanted to come home and take care of people. But then the fuel of like, we each had $200,000 in student loans. So you do the math.
Right.
And I have, we have Roman and now a set of twins on the way and a practice to build out. And it's like, you don't get an option to fail when
Right.
you got that much riding on it, right? And it pushed us both. And it was really great getting to practice with him. And that way I could stay home with the babies for a little bit and come back at my own pace. And when I did in 2000, so they were born in 11, came back in 12, and we decided we wanted to stay married forever. And so I decided to go open a solo practice at that point because there was just too much passion and energy in one facility.
It's a lot of horsepower under one roof.
Yeah. And it was a really beautiful start to get to do that. But we both had very different visions of the type of chiropractic we wanted to practice. And so I headed in town and, a lot of that, again, like it's interesting, whenever we have to tell our stories, you kind of reflect of like, how did I get here? My uncle, who I was named after, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And I actually drove to Tennessee and brought him home the weekend before I opened my practice. And he was the very first person I got to adjust in the space. And he lived at my parents' house for a month, and then we got to send him to the next phase of his spiritual journey. And watching him suffer, and again, his story and how he ended up in that situation fueled the fire even more. So, I mean, here I was like, we bankrolled this second practice, went totally broke again to reopen another practice. And I watched one of my very best friends leave the planet and suffer in ways I didn't realize a person could suffer. And so I'm like building the practice and running my family during the day and then spending my mornings and nights with him. And, I don't know that I would wish it on anybody, but when you watch somebody die, when you get to be there and you get to watch them take their last breath,
it's a gift.
it really lets you know how short this whole thing is. And one of the last conversations we had was, he was always proud of me, like overly proud of me. And, he was like, do it and do it big. And don't you hold back for anybody. The whole world needs to know that they're powerful on the inside. And he was very anti-establishment, very anti-allopathic. He had a really bad experience in allopathic, traditional Western medicine. And so he was, he left me some agreements that he expected me to follow. And that charged me forward and fueled me branching into public speaking and going to speak on stages to other chiropractors and healthcare professionals and talk about pediatric chiropractic and talk about the purpose of living and talk about growth and pushing into the pain instead of pulling away from it. So that was probably that second life speed bump that was really, really painful. And cracked open one of my most profound, I guess, life catapults as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is a gift when I've had that experience watching both my parents die in my house, and everybody thinks, oh, I remember a couple people said how awful that is. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It was the most beautiful thing. I mean, if it's going to happen, I mean, it was a gift, and it puts a perspective, and kind of the same thing, right? You're never the same after that. And if you can take that kind of energy and turn it into something positive, both of those deaths of my parents, watching that whole process, it was a pivot point in my life and put me in a direction that I wouldn't be here to this day if I didn't experience that.
Right.
As opposed if you weren't there, or you just heard that they died, or, I would much rather have the experience that I had, for sure. Again, so many great examples of pressure points. Right. That's that pain or that pressure. Pressure is a better way to put it, into the pain. That pressure, it's inescapable. I mean, we're all going to experience those things. And again, choosing to do what you do with it, and realizing that while you're in that moment, that it is shaping your character for something great and significant if you choose to embrace it, I guess.
Well,
right?
lean in. I think
And
Devin
lean
was talking
in.
about leaning in, right? Instead of leaning
Yeah,
out.
and I think that's the call to action, right? So, I mean, I've birthed 5 humans into the world, and I can tell you that's not like fun in that like, it's a painful thing. And there's a point where you hit, and it's like, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
Like, you reach the absolute, like, there is no way. And then you do.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and when you fight the contraction, you suffer. And
Right.
when you lean into it and you breathe through it, you get closer to holding your baby. And I think it's the same thing, right? And we're conditioned. We are conditioned at every corner of our life cycle to numb the pain. Just drink, just smoke, just turn on the TV, just take the pill, numb the pain, get away. If it hurts, look, it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that's honestly one of our Achilles heels of what we're even witnessing in our culture right now is like, let's just make it go away
Yeah.
instead of leaning into the discomfort and learning from it and birthing something beautiful beyond it.
Yeah, we had a guest on and not too long ago that talked about because everybody kept saying, well, I just want to go back to the way it was, before COVID. And it's like, no, we really don't, because before COVID wasn't like that great. I mean, maybe things were felt safer or felt more stable, but that was all superficial, right? Because once we got into COVID, we got to see all the stuff that's really always been there. But now it was kind of like, oh, well, if you went through some financial uncertainty, you went through, health uncertainty, right, with the COVID itself, all of these things kind of made us, at least from my perspective, made me question, okay, what do I believe? What do I want? I mean, for me, COVID was a focus point, and it's still a focus point. It's not like it was like, 2 months of focus, and now I'm on to what it's still evolving and changing my focus. And for me personally, it's made me think more purposefully about my time, how I'm spending my time. And, at post-COVID, I started to strip stuff away, business stuff and other stuff that was like, do I really care to go to that event, or am I just going because it's what I've always done? Do I really care to be involved with this organization, or is it just what I've always done, right? Does it bring me joy?
Yeah.
Does it bring others joy? Or is it just something that I'm expected to do, and if I took that same energy and applied it towards something positive that I truly care about, which I think I'm still evolving to, then it changes my energy level. It changes the, Devin, you talk about shining your light. I think your practice is called the LightHouse. So it changes that, it changes the amplification of what I should be doing versus just watering down. If you only have so many bars of energy in the day, right?
Yeah.
If you only have so much bandwidth, where you're going to literally spend that bandwidth. And to you guys, both of your point, this thing isn't an infinite life cycle, right? I mean, at least in this vehicle that we're in sitting today, this thing has an expiration date. We don't know when it is, but at some point, it's like, boop, there's the expiration date.
It made me think, I was thinking about, so you're saying that, it's kind of like the subtle difference between, I've asked the question, like when I did coaching, for example, and I used to hear people, and I'm even guilty of this myself, it's like, I want to be successful. I hear people say that all the time. I want to be successful.
Oh, right.
And then I go, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And they always say, and this is where I think society and the culture is kind of stuck in, they always say these kind of superficial things. Well, I want this amount of money. I want this house on the hill or this house on the lake. I want to drive this kind of car. I want this position. I want this title. And then I'm like, okay, I guess. And then I asked the question, and I've asked it to myself, and I said, well, and that's asking what a successful life looks like. Then I said, well, what does a significant life look like? And every time I ask that question, and people, when they're talking about success, they're on the edge of their seat and their chest is out and they're talking like this. And I said, what does a significant life look like? And they kind of do this.
Right.
And they start thinking.
Right.
And the answers are always consistent. They start saying things like, well, I want my spouse and my kids to be proud of me. I want to know that I was here and I made a difference. I want to know that I'm value added in the things that I'm doing, right? And all that stuff, when you start asking what a significant life looks like, you realize the reason why we avoid it is because there's a lot of pressure involved in living a significant life. And that's what I said earlier at the beginning when I said that's the price of admission for a significant life. I mean, you can't avoid it. You have to go through the dark night of the soul. You have to deal with the uncomfortableness because you're in a growth zone, and the comfort zone and the growth zone don't exist in the same plane. So you're going to have to be in a painful spot, right? Anyway, that's what I was thinking about.
Don't we all wish sometimes though that we were in the comfort spot a little bit longer? It's like grow. It's like drinking from the fire hose. Oh, come on, Devin. What do you got? What do you got?
Actually, I know you well enough to know that the comfort zone is so boring.
So it's mediocre, right? It's mediocre.
It's worse than death to me.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's wasting the gift. It is. And that's probably my uncle's voice chiming in a little bit, but you know, I mean, it's, man, like we're here for such a brief, and we're here to make noise. We're here to feel things. We're here to taste things and go places and hug people. And man, the comfort zone sucks. Like that's the biggest lie we ever get told.
Well, it is a big lie.
And something you just said, I want to chime in on here, which is, you know, for a while in my 30s, in my earlier to mid 30s, I thought, you know what, if I just can get through this without pissing people off and without, you know, if I just do my job and go home and I can, you know, everything will be okay. And that's not really the essence of life, right? The essence of life, I like what you said. It's like, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a physician out in LA, and he was like, I was talking about some stuff with him. He's like, you're not getting messy enough. And I was like, you know, I'm like, what? And he's like, life is messy. If you want to live life, you got to get messy. You got to do things that aren't always going to make everybody happy, right? You got to lean in. You got to experiment. And I mean, when you say messy, it's kind of like the first time you learned to ride a bike, you fell down, you skinned your knee, right?
Yeah.
It's life. And sometimes I think I know I'm too conservative in my approach to experiencing what's here, right?
Well,
if this is an amusement park, let's go ride the rides.
Everybody that we all look up to, or people's lives we appreciate and value and maybe even want to emulate, has been messy. Right? Extremely
exactly
messy.
Oh yeah, when you read the biographies of people that were highly influential in our society and other societies, a lot of times their personal lives were just a train wreck for a long time until they figured some stuff out, right? I mean, I'm like, I was reading a very famous person the other day, and he's very high regarded. And then when I started really reading his biography, I was like, holy cow, he made some horrible decisions, right? But that didn't, and I guess when I was reading his biography, it said, you know, he had kind of this shadow, you know, I've heard it called the shadow self. He had some stuff, right? He had some stuff. He cheated on his wife several times. I mean, but he still kept going, right? He still kept going. He still kept talking. He still kept giving speeches. He still kept, you know, basically, you know, pushing a movement that changed society.
Because we all do, right? Like we all have a shadow. We all have, you know, regrets. We all have and I think that, you know, I feel equally pulled into who I know I'm capable of becoming, and fueled by, you know, the fearful or broken or judgmental or, you know, the parts of myself that I'm not super proud of. I want to help, you know, I want to glue some of those pieces back together. And so, I mean, I think that, you know, you do grow by looking at both, right? Where can I go? And what do I really need to reconcile within myself? And I think that that's definitely, that's where I get, you know, people are, man, you're really fiery. And it's like, well, I don't know. I guess because I enjoy the work. It's not easy work. Like you said, it's the price of admission. It's like Dark Night of the Soul. I feel like I've had 5 or 6 of those.
Right. You probably have.
Cat with 9 lives, but it's, you know, just, I know there's more. Right. And it's and I want to go back to those pieces in myself and hug her and not live a life where, you know, I could have, or I should have, or
that's my biggest fear. I've gone for the, you know, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I went past the basic fear of fear of trying and fear of failure. All that's old hat for me. My biggest fear is what you just said. And you and I were talking about last night. I was like, I feel like I'm running out of time, and that fear, the thing that just gnaws at me and keeps me awake at night is I don't want to get on that deathbed and have those 5 or 6 regret ghosts walking around the deathbed, shaking their head, looking at me, going, you know, if you only, you know.
Yeah.
And so that is my biggest fear, and maybe sometimes I got to be more cognizant. I you know, even just some of the people that I'm coaching now, I'm seeing that they're still in that well, I don't want to get up on that stage, or I don't want to take that first step. And I'm like, why?
Right.
But I guess I got to remember, I've had some blessings, some people early on who, when I was learning to take that first step on the stage or do something I never thought I could do before, that they looked at me and they said, I think I told you that story about that mentor I had, that Tracy Sloat, she passed away. She was actually an acting coach here in town. But anyway, she was helping me in my public speaking years ago. And I was having a biggest speech I had up into my career, and I was just nervous as hell, right? And just like I was going to puke. And she's like, are you afraid? And the first part of me was that I wanted to say, oh, no, I got this all covered. Right. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm petrified. And she's like, and she grabbed me by my collar, and she's like, that's what living's all about. And she goes,
I love it.
No, go knock him dead.
I love it.
And it was so awesome. I'll never forget that. She goes, no, go knock him dead. And then they introduced me.
I love it.
Well, and fear is so prevalent right now, and I think it's important. I just heard something of Simon Sinek saying, like, every time he catches himself saying, like, I'm afraid or I'm nervous, he trades it with excited. Gosh, I'm so excited.
Right.
This is so exciting, and he won't let himself use those words because words resonate in our system.
Right.
He understands that energetically exciting takes him up the ladder, and scared or nervous takes him down the ladder.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's a good one that would serve people right now in a big way, right? That's an easy thing of, like, yes, growth, entrepreneurship, but also like all the things right now, and all the conversations. We're all in a growth, a pressure cooker at the moment. So I think leaning in with a little more excitement changes the version of ourselves we show up in conversations, the way we show up at work, the way we show up in the hard, tough decisions that we're all making right now is like, man, this is really hard. This is really challenging. Like when we use those words, they take our power away versus, man, this is exciting. These are exciting times we're living in right now. What a fascinating time to be on planet Earth. Like that energetically takes me and my family and my kids, when I have my team, up instead of down.
Right. And I want to kind of chime in on that too, which is the I think right now, and we've talked about it on the show, but you see social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, social media, the news, everything, and I see a lot of I'm against, right? It's just like the human mind, right? It's just a reflection of the human mind. The human mind is like has a tendency to gravitate towards negativity if you don't feed it positive things, right? If you don't feed it, it has a propensity to go negative on you. And I see that on social media. I see so many people against this, against that, against that. And then you see some people that are actually pro something, right? But pro something just for the sake of being pro, not against the other thing, right?
Like I'm right and you're wrong.
Like I'm right and you're wrong, or right. Like I have to win. My opinion has to be the only opinion that's right. And I really respect that and I know, Devin, you do a lot of this, but I really respect when people are like, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it, and this is what I'm going to support, versus saying, you're wrong, you suck, you're a bad person. I mean, that doesn't do anybody any good. And again, those words, to your point, resonate in that person that's creating it. And you just see people with these whole diatribes, and I'm just like, yeah, well, what do you actually stand for, right? You're against this and against this, and you want other people to do other stuff or the same stuff you're doing, but yet what do you actually stand for?
Well, and that push, like, against conversation, they're both sides of that coin are part of the sinking ship.
Right.
They're both in the boat. They're both clinging to the normal that's not coming back.
Right.
And
absolutely right.
And so we're either having a conversation about the world that we're still fighting each other to save, or we're creating a forward-focused conversation of what are we going to build beyond? Where are we headed? I don't really want to talk about all of that. How do we not, it's like it's time to disrupt all of the things, healthcare, media, government, school. It's all entangled. It's all real messy. So it's time to pull up sleeves and go, where do I fit in this?
Right.
Because that whole, we're born for such a time as this. There's no mistake. I believe our soul's called out to be here right now. And so leaning into my meditations with where do I fit? Where do I belong now? Where am I highest serving to myself, to my family, to humanity, that you would trust me right now with a microphone? Because we don't know who's going to hear this conversation,
right, of course,
or how it will then impact their trajectory. but we know it does. And so we engage here because we know somebody's going to get an adjustment that they didn't know was coming by listening. And those are the things I want to be a part of because I know they take us forward. I don't want to go get interviewed to talk about, like, to wage war,
Right.
because
Right.
that's not getting us anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, and I think and realizing that we all, even if whatever side and everything and all the differences are so easy to point out, no one's doing the hard work to all of our point here is that, well, we have a lot more in common than we're willing to admit, you know?
Right.
I don't care if you're red, blue, left, right, whatever. We have a lot in common.
Well, and the one common denominator.
We have way more in common than we have
Of course.
of differences.
Right.
And that never gets talked about. I mean, maybe it does in passing and kind of in a bumper sticker sense, but no one's doing, what does it mean to really get around the campfire like we used to do and sit around and start having those conversations? Because when you're at a campfire and I can see you and I can see your eyes and I can see your soul, it's a whole different conversation.
Right.
And, you know, and that's when all those walls and those barriers start to get torn down. So how do you recreate the campfires? That's really what I don't think anybody really knows at this point, is like, how do you create those campfires again?
And they do exist, right? Like, you
Oh, yeah,
know,
they're there.
I mean, we did the big idea this year, and I guess to back up, I
Yep.
mean, in my practice, you know, when my uncle passed, you know, we were taking these like forward steps. My practice boomed. The babies are doing good. Joey's practice is doing good. And then a couple months later, we found out that my mom, who was my uncle's sister, had bladder cancer. And her journey over a year and a half was horrific, to say the least. And I was the medical person in the family that took her to every appointment, took her to every chemo, every radiation, every surgery that we don't have enough time in the day to go into what I got to bear very close witness to. And long story short, it spread to every bone in her body, which, you know, as a chiropractor, to not be able to like adjust or to be able to touch because every bone was hurting so bad. You know, she passed in a very short amount of time, and birthed from all of that experience. I was like, okay, my practice is not enough. More people need to know that their body knows how to heal itself, that acupuncture is not witchcraft, that they have power they've never tapped into, that they're resilient. And so I created an event called The Big Idea. It's based off a chiropractic poem. Well, the first few years really were probably just to help mend my own broken heart from what I had gone through with her. And I didn't, and people are like, what's the big idea? And it's like, well, I don't really know. Cause it was another one of those soul nudging things to just literally, Matt was there. We put up a tent in our backyard and invited our practice members to be there, but it was our campfire, right? Because that is where people form those bonds of love and trust, and where they do go, well, she did it, so can I, and he did it. I'm going to take that and run with it. And so people just took the stage. Matt's beautiful wife was one of our speakers that day. And I just wanted to do it one time, and I saw what happened. We had people who said that they were suicidal and ended up going to chiropractic school, and they're wildly like on a trajectory of success. We had marriages that were about to divorce and are healed. We had, I mean, I collected testimonial. I mean, it just blew me away. So I was like, well, okay, maybe we'll do another event. Second year, same type of thing. 2020, I paused and actually did a freedom rally with 900 people during the lockdown. No masks, no distancing. We were shoulder to shoulder. You want to talk about one of the most spiritual experiences when you're like in that kind of energy when you're not supposed to be. It's like, whoa. So that was September 2020. And then this year, you know, I think we have to do that. Whether your comfort level is to gather with 10 people or 100 people or 500 people, as it was for the Big Idea, or 3,000 at the biohacking conference that I went to this past weekend, like wherever your comfort zone is at this point in the game, like get there. This virtual, I love sitting here with you guys like this, but it doesn't touch the way that we are wired. We are wired to touch and to feel and to connect. And in those rooms, you've been to the Tony Robbins, you've been to the empowering. And so like the Big Idea is my campfire now, that I am committed to creating an opportunity where I know people will walk in one version of themselves and they will leave different.
Yeah.
And I hope uplifted with more light within their system, more light in their body and soul than they had prior. And I think that's such a huge thing that you mentioned, because it's like, we're all different. I know some people aren't ready to get back to it, but for those of us that are, man, you find a way, make a way, no excuse. No excuse. And if you want to know
Agreed.
how, message me, because I'll help you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, and I do think that is the universal obligation. Everybody says, well, why are we here? What's the whole point? And well, you can debate and talk what it is, but I think that the universal one that everybody has is to make the place better than you found it. I mean, I think that is the one obligation, that if you don't live up to your shame and the angels, if you're not trying to do something to make the place better than you found it, doesn't mean you have to change the whole world, but at least you're part of it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is an obligation. I don't think that's a choice, to be quite honest.
No. Yeah. And you can't turn it off, right? Like when the universe told me chiropractic, if I would have tried to say no, she would have found another way. And the nudge will just get louder, right? Like it gets more challenging, not less, when you try to say no to destiny.
Right.
She is a committed energy, destiny, and she'll find a way to grab you by your lapels and draw you in, whether you like it or not. And you don't want the painful lessons. So when you hear that intuition and that nudge of like, will you throw the big idea? I mean, I look at how this year's came together, and I don't pick the speakers. It's just like, all right, who do I want? Like, and then all of a sudden it all just drops together. I could have never created what we witnessed this year. Never. Devin could not do that. But girl who dances with the universe, she can do that. Like, because I take the time to listen.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that everything significant that I've ever done or gone forth has gone through a nudging. It's never been through a concrete, detailed plan. Everything that I've done that I consider significant in my life has gone through a listening of a nudging. Some great opportunities that I've missed was because I ignored the nudgings, right? And some of the painful lessons that I've had of missed opportunities or missed. And when I say opportunities, I'm not just saying financial. I'm saying, you know, life-changing opportunities, life growth opportunities, missed opportunities, was because you didn't listen, because you let the fear take over. And the more that you can let fear be the barometer of the blessing and not be afraid of like, oh, this is, it points you to what you should be doing, right?
Yeah, always. Yeah, and and not even in the way you expect.
Right.
You can't even, I mean, that's why the mind isn't the way, and the soul or heart or whatever word you want to use is, I believe, because, Joe Dispenza is a wizard, so he'll put it in more scientific terms, but our thoughts become our reality. And if I only think with the thoughts I've had, I'll just keep recreating what I've always lived.
Right.
Versus if I engage with a fear, if I engage with a nudge, if I engage in something new, well, then I'm going to have a new reality, and then new thoughts, and then it grows, right?
Yeah.
So it's,
yes, because everything, I've been into some discussions lately, and it's like everything that we see outside of nature, this table, the chairs, the computer, everything that you've got around you, everything that we've got around us, at some point was a thought in someone's mind. Otherwise, it doesn't exist, right? Somebody had to create all the stuff, right? And it wasn't, God just didn't wave a magic wand and all of a sudden this desk and table are here, right? And somebody had a thought, oh, I can make a desk and it can look like this and it can look like that. And so I agree 110%. I truly believe you got to change your thoughts if you want to change your life. And a part of that, I think, is what we've been talking about. You got to surround yourself with people who are in that space too. And not that no one's perfect, but are you with people that want to go, that are travelers along the journey, or are you just with people that are comfortable being uncomfortable in their mediocrity, right? Because that's easy to get stuck in, especially now in these weird times we're in. It's easy to sit back and say, you know what, I just want to be in my own little bubble. But, that doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve others, right?
Yeah. And I think now here comes the complexity of the world we live in that, like, we're hell bent on this, the scales needing to tip one way or the other, or to balance out. And it's like, I'm not sure they can, is all of humanity always going to like the same food or like the same music? No.
Of course not.
No. So right now, how can we be expected to live and choose the same way? where did that become that there's this universal, that's a lot,
Yeah, I
that's
don't know.
not
It's like,
real.
Right.
So I do think leadership will, I hope, and I'm going to hold my sunshine and rainbows vision until I'm not here anymore, is that, it Trolls too. I'm a mother of five, so I kind of live by children's movies.
Right.
But that's the whole premise of the movie, right? Is like, which music is better, the pop trolls or the rock trolls and it's like, we're all, right? It's, and it's diversity, and that's important. And I hope that as we love each other through this time, and we get through the difficulty, we need to let each other live the way we want to live again. And it'll be interesting to see that pan out, because it's the same premise. And my vibe tribe is going to look different, maybe similar to you guys's, but very different than someone else's.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So
Well, I agree. I mean, there's strength in that diversity, but I think what people miss about when they talk about diversity is that with diversity becomes a natural tension. And I think a lot of times people, they think they need to get rid of that tension. And so that's, again, this is where we're talking about where, through the pressure, the diamonds are come forth from the pressure. And a lot of that gets missed, particularly in our larger systems, in our corporations and in the government, and even in our own personal lives, that we don't realize that there's a gift in that tension, and that if you can harness that tension in a positive way, that's when the real magic happens. And that has been lost by a lot of people. Yeah, it's one thing. I agree with you. I want diverse thought. I want to surround myself with people who disagree with me, so that we can sit there and hash it out, so we can get the best result. A lot of people it takes courage, and it takes a lot of letting go of the ego to get to that spot. And I think that's where I agree with you 100%, right? I mean, and I think that, and I don't know, and you see people talking about it, giving lip service to diversity, but it's like, everything would be cool as long as you like everything that I like, right? And I'm going to try to destroy you if you're not. I'm like, hey, that's cool that you're that way. I don't agree with it. I don't like that you're that way, and here's why. And then, but I still love you.
Right.
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 And then you go, well, what? And you're like, well, I don't like that you're this way. Like, why not? And I'm like, well, because you still love me? I still love you. I'm like, well, is there a better way? I don't know.
Right.
As I told, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I told the story to Matt before. I see that my parents, they had a circle of friends. Did I tell you this? I think they played bridge. They all got married around the same time, 1959, 1960, 1961, and there were 6 couples. And they played bridge because that's what people did in the 50s and the 60s, right? They got together and they played bridge at the house. And like I said, they were Nixon Republicans, Kennedy Democrats. They were Jewish, they were Protestant, they were Catholic, and they would sit there and they'd play cards, and they would give each other shit about, Nixon, he's like,
Yeah.
And like, then they'd make a Catholic joke, and then they'd make a Jewish joke, and they'd make, but they loved it, and the way they lived life through. They're all but one are dead now, and it's kind of sad. But I've watched them and how they lived life and how they loved each other for 40, 45, 50 years. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't even have 12 friends. That's the thing.
And talking, and we've let that polarity push us apart instead of finding a way to create unity in diversity, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine who's big in politics, and I was just like, what's different? Like, we have been through all of this, but man, like, and he was like, well, what he's like, fundamentally looks different to me is if you look back through all of our wars or 9/11 or any of those big, like, we still all held like very similar, what's the American dream?
Right.
What's the American, we were still Americans. And that meant something. And now I don't know that we have that. And I do believe we'll birth it again. And I think this is the diamond that's coming. And there's kind of like birth. I think I'm feeling it. I feel it on people who come to get adjusted right now, where we're all like, I can't do this.
Right.
Just like birth, right? I cannot, I can't take anymore. And it's like, yes, we can. Yes, we can. We are going to birth a whole new, beautiful version. And I have to anchor in that because we've weathered bigger storms. The wild card, when you look at, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people just want to feel safe.
Right.
They want to belong. And the problem right now is that, whether you like a certain food or music, that doesn't potentially or in theory pose direct harm or threat to your neighbor. So now our medical or health beliefs are ramming into one another. Our scientific trust and these discussions have just never been as accessible, or social media. There's like, but I think it's going to give us an opportunity to learn so much about ourselves, and I think we'll be an empowered humanity beyond it. It's just a rough road at the moment.
I think the problem is the technology is so exponentially changing so fast, and our bodies and brains are so wired for, it's so far, right? And I think that's where you see
it's going at a very
disconnect.
fast pace. There's a lot of information that we have to take in and sort and discern and choose if we want to engage with it and not engage with it. And it's hard not to engage with it. I mean, I don't watch news. My news comes from, unfortunately or fortunately, some social media and then the people around me. And I try not to get snagged. I mean, it's like a practice. It's like going to the gym. It's like eating the right food. It's like if I see somebody post something and every once in a while I'm like, and I start to engage and I'm like, why? Why am I doing that? Because that is not going to change one iota, because I'm just getting ready to give them the opposite view. And then I'm like,
it's a fix.
Right. But I'm like, but like if I'm going to give them the opposite view, then call them, take them to lunch, sit down and have a freaking conversation. Don't be a wuss here. I mean, lean in, right?
And we all three in our own ways just use it's hard, it's challenging, right?
Right.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Exciting.
It's exciting.
So it's, I have to kind of self-adjust myself, because I go into that and it's, if you've read Power versus Force, it's energy, right? We shrink down into anger and grief and fear and shame. And it's like, okay, head back up. Like, how can I create more peace out of this experience? And, it is a fascinating time to be on planet Earth.
It is a fascinating
time.
It is.
I think it is the subtle difference. That was one thing I got out of this conversation was, it is how you look at it. It's a simple thing of, simply thing, well, I can't do this, to like, well, how can I, right? I mean, just that subtle different change in language is the beginning of something new.
Of course.
And you're right. It's like, but it's easy to get drawn down, because I think it's our natural state. I don't know why it's our natural state. Well, it's so easy I could sit there and talk for an hour and tell you all the things that I hate.
Right. But tell me all the things that you love and
that I love and that I want.
It's challenging, right? Oh. And I think there is some historical, call it energy of the earth, our consciousness, humanity. We're evolving, right? We're evolving whether we like it or not. We're evolving. And so, when you talk about power versus force, and I've read Dr. Hawkins pretty extensively now over the last 6 months, and humanity has shifted over kind of this threshold, going from fear into engagement and being able to engage in things. And so we have kind of come through a cycle of the negativity, or it's easier to, and we're still learning how to live in this new space of, okay, how do we decide what we want? How do we, I see more people struggling with their sense of purpose now than I've ever heard before in my whole life. And I think a lot of it's just that shift, kind of from going from, okay, the negativity and I just got to get stuff done and everything's hard, not to the kind of this point of they're kind of on, a couple days ago was the equinox. It's kind of like being on that fine balance. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, what do I want? And that's not easy, right? I mean, and that pressure, pain, however you want, but that brings its own set of fun toys to play with, right?
And I think we're very much dealing with a real trust issue in where we're headed. I think a lot of people are scared of something really bad happening.
Have you guys ever
a war? Like, we can't predict what the future is going to bring. So setting goals has gotten harder because we don't trust that this is going to level out on some levels. Michael Beckwith has talked about this, and people are talking about revelations and in the apocalypse, and he was like, yeah, this is the apocalypse. Not as in the world's going to implode and we're all gone, but the world we knew is gone. Right. And the sooner we embrace that, but then how do you goal set? How do you create visions? I mean, you have to be a dreamer and a doer in a time such as this, or you're just chasing your tail. Yeah. Because if you're waiting for the world to make sense to chase your dream, you ain't going to get there. No. Right. Because we can't wait on that. Actually chasing our dreams, it's like it flips us more inside, more connection to God, more connection into like, why am I here? What can I do today? We actually, I think, need to engage less in all of that and more in like,
More
what can I
campfires.
create today?
Right.
And be okay that we don't know what 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
But we do have control in today,
That's
Right.
and
right.
we need to own that.
Have you guys ever heard of that book called The Fourth Turning? Heard that?
No.
I can't remember the author's name, but look it up. I read it last month, and it was actually written in '97, but the website's more up to date. It's the whole premise of the book is that the history moves in these natural cycles,
Uh-huh.
and they're called turnings. And so in the Western civilization, which is 400 to 600 years old, it was easier to measure, but the whole globe has kind of been that way historical. But if you just look at the Western civilization, it's easier to measure because it's been so short. And basically what they're saying is that everything kind of moves in these 80 to 100-year cycles. And within those 80 years, there's 4 turnings, each 20 years long.
Right.
And if you look at the last one, I can't remember all the names of the turnings, but they're basically the last one is a crisis. And we're in the crisis one, and the crisis one lasts 20 years. And so based on the book and what the website's saying is 2008 to basically 2028. We're in the middle of a crisis
period.
mode. And the definition of the crisis mode is like where the civilization and society gets tested to the limits, like to the absolute breaking point. Like it could go one way or the other based on how it turns out. And so if you look at those crisis points, if you go back 80 years, it was the Great Depression, World War II. That 20-year cycle. If you go back 80 years from that, it was the Civil War period. And then if you go back 80 years from that, it was the American Revolution.
Oh, cool. Very
And then after that, what follows a crisis is a great rebirth where everything and everybody's aligned and there's a whole bunch of opportunity and this and that. And then you get a questioning or kind of a breaking down of the cycles. And anyway, it's very interesting how it kind of follows these natural cycles. And
Interesting. That is interesting.
to your point, I think we're in a crisis. We're in the middle of it, and we still don't know.
Yeah.
That's where that uncertainty is. Is there going to be a major financial collapse and a war? Highly likely. Who knows?
Who knows? Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
history is proven.
and what do we need to look at? How do we get here, right? Me as a chiropractor, I'm not looking at, okay, how do I fix COVID? How do I fix this mask vaccine situation? How do I fix? No, I go back to root cause. How do we get here? We're asking the wrong question. We're trying to address the symptoms, and that's not going to solve anything. It's actually just going to create problems. Like, take a pill for this because this one didn't work. It actually perpetuates the problem in a lot of cases. So if you dig back through and figure out how we got here in the first place, it's like our healthcare system has been broken for a long time. Our school system is a mess. Government, I don't even feel like I need to touch. And then you got our food sources. It's like we have some major things and so for the brave leaders out there who are listening and who are committed to taking the responsibility of like, look, I can't fix all that, but I'm in healthcare and I'm committed to finding the source of how we got here and doing my part to set it right. If I'm, a journalist, I'm going to enter the field that way. If I'm a teacher, I'm going, and I think that the leader of the future is looking back to the root cause of what we're living in, and they're going to bring about new solutions because surface level it's just going to create more chaos.
Well, but also I agree with all that you said, but we also have to have that, like you said, like what do we all stand for that everybody can rally around? And that is the blessing of a major crisis. It kind of recenters everybody like, oh, this is what we stand for.
And this is what we want to do, right?
Hopefully.
Yep. Yeah. We'll get there.
Good stuff.
Man, I can't believe we've been talking almost for an hour.
I know.
55 minutes we've been recording. I'm looking at the clock. That's amazing. Is there anything, Devin, that we didn't talk about that you were just itching to make sure that people knew or get out? I mean, as we kind of wrap up here.
No, I mean, I feel like we let it all, yeah.
We're ready to solve. Everybody can solve the world now. We got 3 kick-ass brains in here. We can solve the problem. Right?
I mean, yeah, you want to change the world, change yourself.
Exactly.
And I
Start
think,
with
too,
you.
that everybody, I struggle with this and teaching this and trying to get my kids to realize we have way more influence than we give ourselves credit for. So you got to surround yourself to people. You said it earlier, you're not getting messy enough. I had people tell me, he's like, you're not dreaming big enough,
Right.
And it's true. That's why we got to surround ourselves with people who can push us.
Right. Like
And
the people.
you quiet the noise. You engage in Facebook rhetoric less, and you engage in your masterminds more.
Yep.
Right?
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's a return to the campfire, so to speak. Like, who's on your tribal council right now?
Yep. Exactly.
Well, I'm glad you're around my campfire. I know I'm better for it. And I'm glad to know you, and I'm so excited to see what you're going to do for the city. And like I said, so glad to engage with you and help us with our show. How can people learn more about you, get connected with you, learn more about you?
Yeah. So if you're in Wichita, my sister and I run the LightHouse. We call it our House of Hope and Healing. We're chiropractors, acupuncturists. I have a podcast on YouTube and Apple called If They Knew. I host an event each year called The Big Idea. We're looking at April of 2022 on the Earth Day weekend. I mean, I'm on social, Dr. Devin Vrana. I say God gave me a big heart and a big mouth for a reason, so I'm going to use it for good. And I'm a human being, and I really just love meeting people and engaging with people. So shoot me a message. Reach out. I really like hugs. So if you see me in public and your soul needs one, tap me on the shoulder, because that's my favorite medicine, is a good hug.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, very cool. And we'll post all that, obviously.
We'll have all the links
on
to
the
that
show.
on the
On the show notes and all that. So yeah, it is truly an honor and a blessing to know you, and I certainly enjoy, you and your husband and your kids. It's, it's a nice, it's refreshing whenever we get to hang out and just kind of talk about, what I heard several years ago, well, I wouldn't even get it, but basically, small people talk about other people, big people talk about ideas. And whenever I'm with you, I feel like a big person, because we talk about ideas, right? We don't talk about people, we talk about concepts, and just like we do on the show, just like we're doing today. So thank you for helping me remember that that's the importance of life, is talking about ideas and things we can actually affect and want to affect, right?
Awesome. 100%.
Ditto.
Agree.
You guys are doing big things. I'm grateful for the invitation, because I can feel the impact coming. So appreciate the work you guys are doing.
Thanks, Dr. Devin. Thanks for coming on the show. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Next Level Method podcast. If you found some value in this, tell somebody about the show. Tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your kids, let them know all about Next Level Method. And go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more and join our community. Thanks for tuning in.